Hello and welcome. This is Tina Rodell from Sage North America, and just wanted to welcome you to today's webcast. And this is one in the ISV series. And the name of this webcast, of course, is Web-Based Paperless HR with Sage HRMS HR Actions. We're going to just wait for one more minute and let everybody get assembled, and then we will begin the presentation. And your speaker today is Joe Rotella. And he is actually a SHRM SCP, and he will be leading us through the content and information. So just bear with us for 1 minute and we'll get started.
Good morning, folks. As we wait to get started, this is Joe, your host for the webinar, live from the SHRM annual conference floor in Las Vegas. As people join us, I wonder if you could just do me a favor and click your raise the hand icon to let me know if you use Sage HRMS or Abra Suite today. So if you use Sage HRMS or Abra Suite today, please click your raise the hand icon. It'll give me an idea of how many folks are familiar with Abra or Sage HRMS and how many are brand new. Great, I see a lot of hands raised out there. So a lot of folks familiar with Sage HRMS and Abra Suite. I'm going to lower everybody's hands. I'm going to ask you one more quick question. How many of you folks are using Abra Suite today? Remember, Abra Suite, you should have gotten a notice. We know that that product has been retired, and as of September 2020, you won't be getting payroll updates. So if you could raise your hand and let me know if you are on Abra Suite. Abra Suite, the Fox Pro version, that would be great. Sorry if I pronounced this wrong. It looks like Benji. Benji is out there on Abra Suite. And Fran. Not sure if I see any other names. Lisa. So if you want to raise your hand, if you are currently using Abra Suite, that would be great as well. So a couple folks out there on Abra Suite. Thank you so much.
So in just a couple housekeeping items before we get started, this session is being recorded today, and everybody's line has been muted for the purpose of the presentation. And then there will be a Q&A session at the end. If you do have a question, you'll see an icon down below that says questions, and you can pose your question there. So on that note, Joe, I'm going to just go ahead and go on mute and turn it over to you.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me. My name is Joe Rotella, and I'm actually broadcasting this live from the Sage annual conference here in Las Vegas. So if I have any internet connection problems, it's because there are, 15 or 18,000 HR folks here, all probably trying to get on internet as well. I am an SPHR and a SHRM SCP, and today we're going to focus on web-based paperless HR with Sage HRMS HR Actions. So I want to share a little bit about how we see HR today. Traditional HR, you can see the look on her face. I think I see people walking around SHRM that look like that right now. It's very paper intensive. There's a ton of manual data entry. You've probably got a lot of checklists going on to manage the process, everything from who's onboarding and turned in what they need to turn in, or annual performance review, who's turned in what needs to be turned in, or even an annual checklist, to-do list. Did they re-up on the employee handbook or on a confidentiality agreement, things like that. You also maybe are maintaining multiple systems, HR, payroll. You might be using an applicant tracking system, Active Directory, just to keep all your logins and employees with accounts active. And typically this is just a bad experience for everyone. Today I'm going to show you how we can take all this and transform it and go completely paperless end-to-end throughout the entire employment life cycle. I'll show you how data can flow between modules without any typing, how you can leverage reports and alerts to manage the process, and how you can really set up an experience that matches users' expectations. Now, behind the scenes, this is powered by a lot of modules here that are the core of it is Sage HRMS. And of course, we all know HRMS and Abra Suite both are a best of breed solution. That means it's module based, and you can add, pick and choose modules that come from Sage, and modules that are endorsed solution by Sage, and so on. So some of the ones I'm going to hit on today, of course, core Sage HRMS, but I'm not going to show much of it because we're going to be able to do all of this without even going into Sage HRMS and typing. We're going to show employee self-service, and then we'll show Sage HRMS HR Actions, which is the endorsed solution for going paperless. It can handle all your forms for the entire employment lifecycle. We're also going to use it to do a request to hire. We're going to use it to drive a basic online application, a new hire form, a checklist to keep track of everything, I-9 and W-4. I'm going to mention alerts and workflow. That's hard to actually show because it's happening behind the scenes. We'll talk about Sage HRMS Active Directory Conduit and distributed information services as well. Again, with Sage HRMS and you adding on Sage HRMS HR Actions, you really can go paperless throughout the entire employment lifecycle, from a pre-employment and onboarding perspective, all the way through day-to-day forms and forms that are specifically for managers. We also could do goal setting and performance appraisal. Don't worry about writing down the slides. We can get you a copy of all this information. I also invite you to connect to me on LinkedIn. You can always send me a message and say, hey, Joe, send me the slides, or I'd like to do a deeper dive on this, or set up a private demo for your organization. We're able to do that as well. So I'm going to get out of the slides and let's just dive in and start to see the real software. Now, as a reminder, we do have a little questions box in your GoToWebinar panel. So if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to type them in. Now, Dave, thanks. He mentioned my audio keeps muting. See. So what I'm going to do is bring up a browser and go over here to service. So if you're using employee self-service, this should be familiar to you. I'm going to log in as a manager. In this case, it's Clint Eastwood. If you're new to self-service, this is the general layout of self-service. As you can see, there's navigation across the top for what role you're in right now. Because I am a manager, I have an employee tab, but I also have a manager tab. You'll see it changes the links down the left-hand side. And then I have a section where I can get to reports. Over here on the left-hand side is basic navigation. In the center part, you see a dashboard made up of gadgets. In this case, I have it set up to show a summary of my time off, my employees' compensation, how long they have served at the organization, messages, and so on. And you can see I have some basic functionality here to look at what information HR has for me, for my personal information or my address, or who my emergency contacts are. I'm going to jump down though, because one of the nice things about ESS is, besides basic functionality, it's also a framework into which we can plug other modules. So in this case, I've plugged in benefits, say life events, open enrollment. I've plugged in a training module. I've plugged in a timekeeping module. I've also plugged in HR Actions, the paperless form. So I'm going to click on that so we can get to that dashboard there. Thanks, Dave. And here you can see the HR Actions dashboard. It's got 5 gadgets in this case. Remember, I am a manager right now. So I have a status, and I can see I have a form that's waiting for my approval. So let's take care of that while we're here. I'm just going to bring that up. Oh, it looks like Brad Pitt has done the handbook acknowledgement. It takes one signature, me, Clint Eastwood. So I'm going to go ahead and review that. It'll pop up. Robert says audio has been fine for him. Thank you, Robert. So here's that handbook acknowledgement. You can see there's a title of the form. There's a print button. We want you to go paperless, but you might want to print it to PDF. Some header information up here. It looks like Brad read the handbook, a long time ago. this is sample data, right? So Brad read this years ago. I haven't done my job to approve it. There's also an electronic signature block. So I'm going to say looks good and hit approve. That took care of that while we were here. So I'm going to go back down here to my dashboard. Let's see what else we've got. I've got a file cabinet for forms that are for myself. Maybe I want to change my emergency contacts or update my payroll withholdings. I have a file cabinet that has manager types of forms, so that's where I'm going to get pay changes, transfers, promotions, things like that. Oh, I have an administration box, and I can assign a delegate. So I need to do that because I'm going away for 4th of July. So I'm going to go over here and add a new delegate. And while I'm away, I would like my approvals to be done by Sam Wilson over in engineering. So I'm going to go search for him, fill him in, and I'm going to go on vacation from July 1st to July 10th. Now, of course, HR can override these delegations, but I'm going to go ahead and set that up while I'm here. Now, only during this time frame, anytime I get an email saying that I have a form to approve, Sam is going to get that email as well so that he can act on it in my behalf. And again, it's only during that window. This way I get the email as well so I know what Sam's up to while I'm gone. I also have a nice little file cabinet where I can look at any of the forms I have interacted with. It might be ones that I was the initiator, like a pay change for someone, or someone who filled it out, I was one of the approvers, like there's that handbook acknowledgement. In this case, though, I need to hire somebody because I'm totally swamped. So I'm going to go to the manager file cabinet and initiate a new form. In this case, it's under the new hire category. This just filters the list of forms. And I'm going to go ahead and do a request to hire. Now, this is one of the sample forms that comes with HR Actions. We ship with about 40 or so forms out of the box. You can use them to edit them, make them your own, use them as is, ignore them, just make your own. There's no limit to how many forms you have. You're not a programmer to build forms. You just do it point and click with the mouse. So this is just one of my samples. It's a request to hire. Has a place for an attachment. Any form you build can have up to 5. So that'll travel along with the form. Reviewers are able to look at that. It'll always be part of that form. I really need help. So in this case, Abra or Sage HRMS is set up to work with multiple companies. So I'm going to choose my US company. And then again, this is just a sample form, but is it a replacement hire? No. Do I have budget? Yes. And when do I expect them to start? Well, they should start after I come back from vacation. And the annual salary, I think 30K. And they're going to be a regular full-time employee. This code list, this drop-down list is coming right out of Sage HRMS, so there's a tight relationship here, as are these job codes, divisions, things like that. So in this case, I'm going to do a, let's say we're going to do a, I don't know what kind of job we want. How about a QA inspector just to fill something in? And the division is under engineering, department is manufacturing, and the job location is Daly City. So I've got all that filled out, and when I go ahead and hit initiate, you'll see it's got 4 people on the routing slip. We call that workflow. In this case, it goes to my boss, John Wayne, my boss's boss, Grace, then someone in HR. This is a named approver. You can have role-based approvals like I-9 auditor or recruiter, and then it goes to an executive. And that was what I set up when I built this form. So I'm going to go ahead and initiate, and off it goes. It just sent email to John Wayne. It says that you have a form to approve. It's a request to hire, number 1090. So let's just see what that's like. I'm going to log in now. So I'm changing hats. I'm going to be John Wayne. So I'm going to log in here as John Wayne. Now, John would have gotten an email, and that email would have had a link. Of course, the link is secure. If he wasn't logged in, he'd have to log in. But in this case, I'm not going to bother to open email. We're just going to go right to HR Actions. He has 3 things to approve. And there is that new hire form. He also has 2 pay change forms to approve. Now, these forms will sit here up to whatever time you specify on the form, and then if he doesn't approve it, it'll skip him and go to the next approver. So things don't get stuck waiting for someone to approve it. You also can set up alerts. Now that's behind the scenes, that's a database watchdog. Alerts can look at these forms and say, okay, if he hasn't responded in a day, let's send email. Yoo-hoo, you have something to reprove. Hey, it's been 2 days, yoo-hoo. So I like alerts. In fact, that's what I call it, is yoo-hoo. So let's see, John looks at this. There's the attachment. He could bring that up. Here's everything filled in. Here's where Clint said he needs help. And John's going to say, I agree. Hit approve. It's going to send email to Grace. So this is just how that routing process goes. Now let's log in to a different URL. I'm going to go to a different place. This is HR Actions Administration. And I'm going to log in as Veronica Bell. That's the head of HR. And we were in a staff meeting this morning, and it came up that Clint needed help. John said he approved it. In fact, everybody on the call said, let's just make this happen. We really got to start recruiting for this position. So in this case, Veronica could say, oh, let's see if he even filled out the form. I'm going to go to Active Actions. Now this is great because this is a dashboard where an HR person has total visibility into all the forms that are currently routing in the organization. And for a lot of HR folks, this is a first. In many organizations, the HR person doesn't have a clue what forms are going to come down the pipe until they're actually approved and plopped on their desk or in their in-basket. In fact, I'm just curious with all the folks that are out there, how about click the hand, raise your hand. If you're in that boat right now, you really don't know what forms are coming down the pipe most of the time. You might know about special ones until they're all signed off and approved and they end up in your in-basket. So if that's your situation, please raise your hand. I'm just curious as to how many folks are out there in that boat. Amy's in that boat. I feel for you, Amy. You are not alone. Brian's in the same boat as you. So is Fran. So is Lisa, Lauren, Michelle, Raphael, Robert, Sandra. So there's a whole bunch of you in that boat. Thanks so much. I'm going to lower your hands now. So in this case, we can say, okay, everybody approved this on that staff meeting this morning. That's really cool. So I can see that this had 4 approvals. You'll see the little names, O1, O2, H1. I just turned 55 last week. And it reminds me of the TV commercials for You Sunk My Battleship, O1, O2. Well, O stands for operations. That's the chain of command. O1 is not my manager. O2 is my manager's manager, right up the line. H is someone in HR. E is an executive. No worries, you can always hold your mouse over the bubble and see exactly who it is. So in this case, it should be all approved. We don't need to wait for these signatures. I got a verbal approval on our staff meeting this morning. Before I approve it, though, I want to audit it. I want to look at it and see exactly what Clint filled out. So yeah, there's the date and the attachment. He needs help. So it all looks good. Oh yeah, he did say on the call he wants him started at 30,000, but actually company policy is 28,000 and then a bump every 6 months. So I'm going to just change that on the form. We all agreed to it on the call, but per our call this morning, start at 28K and bump every 6 months. Ignore my typing. So we're going to hit save. So we've made a change to that form. Now, what I like from an audit perspective is if we go and look at that form, I like that because I'm a bit of a control person. Now I'm going to skip all these approvers. That's where these operations come into play. I can cancel the form totally. I don't want to do so. I don't want to cancel it. I could skip one approver at a time, but I have to do it 4 times. Or I could just skip it all. Now, if I made a change and I want the approvers to see that and approve that, I can even send this backwards in the workflow. But in this case, I'm just going to approve the whole thing and say, per our call this morning, it's all go. Hit approve. So this form is done. And it's no longer sitting in my active basket. It's actually moved over here to pending. So you can think about pending as you're in basket today. For all the folks who raised your hand, this is where you get a form, it's all approved, and you would typically go type something in to Sage HRMS. Of course, we're not going to do any of that typing today. Here's that request for hire. Oh, somebody here updated their W-4. Someone changed their address. Someone acknowledged the handbook. You'll notice several of these have save icons. I can hit that and it'll update Sage HRMS with whatever's on this form. The request for hire, though, the save is disabled. Well, if you think about it, if somebody asks to hire somebody, you typically don't do anything in Sage HRMS. You're not adding an employee yet. You just need to go recruit them. But we can acknowledge that this is done, just change it to complete, and it'll just take it out of my pending list, kind of take it off my radar screen, and it's actually moved over here to the complete file cabinet. But we're done. We're ready to now go recruit. So if you think about it, you might be using an applicant tracking system today. That's cool. Something like Cyber as an example. You might go out then to Cyber and add this job. You might be using an online recruiting system, Hot Jobs or something like that. So you're going to go out there, add the job, start recruiting. If you don't have a system like that, if you don't have jobs posted on your website, or maybe you have what I think is the worst case is where it says, we have openings, click here to email HR, and then HR just gets rambling emails with a resume attached. Well, you might want to put a little online application right on your website. It's easy to do. Here's an example. Now, you would have a website above this black stripe. Let's see if I have a better example. It might actually look like, let's see if I can bring it up here. You'd have a header up here, and then here you'd have some navigation. But everything below this black stripe, this is all powered by HR Actions. So here, somebody can go to your website, hit Find Jobs. They get a list of all the jobs. And when they click it, they get the job details. And then they get a little online application. That's exactly what this module is called, Basic Online Application. It's an extension of HR Actions that allows you to use HR Actions forms on your public website. It's not a full applicant tracking system. We're not going to let you do scheduling and scoring and all that sort of stuff. It just replaces where you've got a simple paper application. Maybe you don't even have that. They fill it out when they start. But now it lets you put this up on your website and people just go ahead and fill it in. So what's happening here behind the scenes, I'm going to log in as the head of HR, Veronica Bell. So she's going to come in here. And of course, she has the same capabilities. She can see all the jobs, but you'll notice she has some extra links up here. One is job postings. So if she needs to add a new job to the website, no reason to call IT or jump through any hoops. She just clicks add posting. So, let's say if we need a chief cook and bottle washer, and what they're going to do is cook and wash bottles. And if you've got multiple companies, no worries. All these fields are coming right out of Sage HRMS. This is all built with HR Actions. I'm going to pick a location. I'm going to pick their job code. Maybe I don't have a chief cook and bottle washer, so maybe they're going to be a machine operator. And if I want, I can even set up managers in the organization or recruiters who have access to this site so they can see the jobs as people apply for them. This is the cool part here, application form. So here are forms I built with HR Actions. No programming, just click and choose what field you want right out of HRMS. I built two kinds of online applications. One is simple and one lets you specify your driver's license. The concept here is to say, look, when you have different jobs, you might need to collect different information. Maybe it's a job that requires a license or certification. Well, then have an application that asks that information. This case, bottle washers, they don't need their driver's license, so I'll just click that. I'll match that up with a new hire form. Again, this is a form I built in HR Actions. I can even schedule when this thing shows up on the site. If I hit insert, I'm done now. If we actually go look at job postings, we have a whole new posting on our website. Where to go in here? Chief cook and bottle washer. And if somebody goes and looks at it, then they're going to go ahead and let's get out of here and look at the public view. Let me do a refresh. There's chief cook and bottle washer. And when they click it, there's their job title, there's our short little description, and here's my very simple application. So let's go back here and let's go ahead and see who actually has applied for any of these jobs. So remember, I changed browsers here. I'm going to log in as Veronica Bell again. Click over here on job postings. And let's do the machine operator because I actually have two people who've applied. Let's click that and see who they are. Oh, there's Joe Rotella. Oh, he's ready to hire. We've interviewed him. We like him. So he's pretty good. We've talked to him. We're ready to go. Then we have a new guy, Steve Salmon. And you can see that's a brand new applicant. I can actually click it and I can see everything that Steve filled out on that application. And if I go ahead and like Steve and say, yeah, we did, I called him, we interviewed him, we think he could be a good candidate too, I can hit approve, and all it does is change that state to say ready to hire. Now, if you're using an online job site, if you've got an applicant tracking system, as long as you have a field that we can set a status to say this is someone ready to hire, well, then you'll be able to do the next part. Let's go see what that next part is. I'm going to go back over here to self-service. I'm going to log in as Clint Eastwood again. And Clint says, well, I'm ready to make my decision. I talked to Joe Rotella. I talked to Steve Salmon. I am ready to hire one of them. So I'm going to go over here to the manager file cabinet, initiate a new manager action, the new hire category, and I'm going to choose a form, the new hire form, and hit submit. So this is another form that we provide with HR Actions. It's called a new hire form. Now it's smart. It's actually a new hire and a rehire. Because if you're working with Sage HRMS, Abra, you know there's a difference, right? Let's go over here and look. I've got HRMS running. You can see under here, under tasks, there are two separate tasks. One is add a new hire, and one is rehire. So when you're adding an employee to HRMS, you have to know, have they ever worked for us before? If they have, it's really a rehire. You just want to bring them in, keep the same employee number, and show a gap in service. If not, you do a new hire. Well, HR Actions just eliminates that mess. We have one form. We're smart enough to know if you're a new hire or a rehire. Now, if you want, you could fill out this whole new hire form. So you could go ahead and say, here's the person's name and address, and you could type all this in. If you're using an online applicant tracking system, or maybe you're using this basic online application tool that I showed you, well, that's the cool part. This drop down, or something from the applicant tracking system, transfers over new hire form. So there it brought in all the data that we collected from the application and pre-filled out the form. Notice we don't have any cell phone numbers, anything like that. We do have to verify what we want for their job and their department, because maybe in the interviewing process we decided, you know, we were interviewing him for this job, but actually he'd be much better over in this job instead. So of course we can make those changes. And actually, we didn't get him in at our hope of 28K. Joe would only come in at 29K, so I get to adjust that. You'll notice when I leave that field, it filled in the pay period salary and the unit pay. I got 3 approvers on here. I could even have this set up that if the salary was over some threshold, it would extend the routing and add people. So maybe above a certain salary, you need to, get more signatures here. I'm going to go hit initiate. It's going to send email to John Wayne, who can approve this. Now, you guys remember how that approval process works. John would come in here and log in and so on. I'm going to skip all that, and you guys know how. You saw it, right? We're going to go over here to the HR Actions administrative page. We're logged in here as Veronica Bell, the head of HR. And sure enough, if we go to our active routing forms, there's Joe Rotella's new hire application. Now, I want to show you there's no magic going on behind the screens. Here's my Sage HRMS. And I'm going to look at all my employees and get down here to the R's. And there's no Joe Rotella in here. I am not in Sage HRMS. So I'm going to get out of Sage HRMS. Let's go over here and say, yep, this is all approved. We talked about it in our staff meeting this morning. All set, hire. So I'm going to hit approve all. We're going to skip that whole approval process. Remember, if something's approved, typically it goes into this pending box. Now, it doesn't always have to. You can set up forms to say, no, you can, on any form, you can say no manual intervention. So here's Joe Rotella. We've already seen his application. We've got his data, his salary, and everything. So we're good to go. So we can call Joe, we can make that offer, we can send him an offer letter. Joe accepts it. We got his start date. We just saved the form. And I never even had to go into Sage HRMS. So let's start the onboarding process. We're a pretty high-tech company here at uh, Dunedin. I never know how to say that. So we can tell Joe, hey, Joe, you don't start till July 15th, but our employee self-service is available on the internet. Of course, it's safe and secure, just like online shopping. It would have a little padlock. If you could hit this URL, click first time user register here, then you can set up your own login and password. So Joe's going to type this in. We're going to ask some security questions. And of course, you're going to make this as easy as hard as you want. Hit save. Then Joe creates a login. In this case, let's do J. Rotella. And boom, Joe is now in ESS. Didn't take an HR person, remember? So far, all the HR person's done really is hit save. I'm not going to save my password. There's Joe's ESS. Of course, there's no time off, messages, pay history. Hasn't even started, right? Not till July 15th. But that's the cool part. I think Sage HRMS is one of the few HR systems where you can have someone go into ESS and start onboarding even before their start date. In fact, I might tell Joe, when you show up July 15th, if you have your onboarding forms 80% done, I'll even give you a $100 sign-on bonus. Well, what forms does Joe have to fill out? Oh, well, you could give him a giant list, and he could have to go over here to HR actions, and then he'd have to go and create an action, and he could go look at the giant list of forms that's available to him. That's kind of a big list, and that's not the greatest employment brand. Instead, why not just give him a folder of forms, except the electronic equivalent? And we do that right here with something called Dynamic Forms Checklist. It's called My Required Actions. When you click it, the employee is presented with a list of forms that HR has assigned them. So behind the scenes, on his application said he was from Ohio, so it automatically chose the W-4 for Ohio. Now again, it didn't choose all the forms are in there, and it's selected which to give him. I know my audio cut out. Hopefully I'm back live. So let's go down the list. Let's start with the employee data confirmation form. I like this particular form. I think it's great when an employee starts for you to kind of verify what you collected during the recruiting process. So here Joe can go look, and let's peek. Let's just peek behind the scenes. And let's go look at my employees again. I'm trying to get to my tasks button for here for employees. There we go, view edit employees. And let's scroll down and see if Joe actually got hired. Because remember, we never even looked into Sage HRMS. Yep, there's Joe Rotella. Let's bring him up. There's his info. But we don't have any emergency contacts here for Joe. So that's kind of awkward. Let's see if he does it in the onboarding process. So sure enough, there's no emergency contacts in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put some in. How about Brian Delphia? He's a friend, lives on Main Street in Columbus, Ohio, and I know Brian's cell, and I also know his office. And then I've got Sally Smith, and she lives at Sherm Road in Las Vegas, and I only know her home number. So that's pretty good. I could add education and employment. I'm just going to hit initiate. Notice there's no routing slip here. So that's pretty good. Let's see what else we got to do here in our list of required forms. So I got the first one done. It says complete. Oh, we got to do my W-4. Let's hit create. So here's an example of a W-4 form. And what's cool is it looks like the real form, but you can see it's all blank. But if I go in here and say, actually up in my top section, I am single and I want to withhold an additional $7.89. Just want to show you if I hit save and continue, it updates the form. And you can see that it's like right down here, single. There's the amount. I'm going to save this and exit. I'll work on it later because I want to go over this with my tax guy. I'm not even going to look at Ohio. How about my confidentiality agreement? Might as well start that. And here's the whole big confidentiality agreement right in the form. Here we have an electronic signature block. To be a valid electronic signature in the United States, it basically has to have 4 components. Identity, well, we can do that by putting in the name exactly as HR knows our name. And then I put the last digits of the social security number. And then I show it on the form. You wouldn't do this. This is just because it's a demo, because I can't remember all these numbers by heart. So that's identity. Then you have intent. Yes, intent. I read the agreement. You can check a box that says I agree, or you can pick from a drop-down. You wouldn't put both. We had a client whose attorney said, hey, 1 click isn't enough. They like 2 clicks, because a checkbox is 1 click. A drop-down is 2. 1 to drop, 1 to pick. So you'd only use one of those. Then you're going to put in a date. That's the 3rd component. The 4th component is the attestation. Reading this by clicking below, I've read the agreement. So I'm going to go ahead and hit initiate. So we got that done. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, the handbook acknowledgement. Let me go ahead and look at that form. Boy, the handbook's pretty big. Oh, they didn't put the whole handbook in the form. They just put a link. So you could embed links. You could put a link to YouTube, have a message from the CEO, and she could say why confidentiality or something is so important. And we have the same kind of electronic signature block. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, yep, I read the handbook. I agree. Put in a date. And then go ahead and hit initiate. And looks like, oh, I didn't fill something out. Oh, so it checks the fields. Yep, gave me an error message because I needed to put the actual date when I read the handbook. So forms know how to check and look for fields. That's pretty cool. So that's happening. That's out there routing. What else I got? Form 8850. I've got a CC305 if you need that. Payroll direct deposit. By the way, that W-4 would go right into HRMS, which then can update payroll. So you should have a connection between HR and payroll. If not, let's get that going. You don't need to retype this stuff in. I can put in a copy of a voided check. It has a nice picture of a check there, and I can even split the deposit up into multiple destinations. No worries. So I don't want to do that now. I'm just going to hit save and exit. What else we got? Oh, we got our I-9. So let's go see what a paperless I-9 is like. So here we've got 5 attachments. So here people can attach pictures or scans of documents from the lists A, B, and C. They're optional. You still need to review the originals on their first day at work, and you have 3 days, I think, to get that done. So that's handy just to have those attachments there, though. You can see there's a big section here the employee fills out. Then they go to their certification, where they have to type in their name exactly as HR has it. You have to pick continue. This is actually a federal requirement. Then they fill in a date. Then they can say, I did not use a preparer or translator. Then the employee can stop. From here, it could go to a translator or preparer who could fill out their section. And then, of course, from there, it goes to the employer who's going to review and verify all their documents. But I want to show you what the form looks like. So here's your I-9. There's all your blank fields, right? I'm going to go down here all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to hit save and continue because I want to show you something about I-9s that I think some people may overlook that we actually take care of. So here's your I-9. Notice for other last names it says NA or apartment number NA. Now that seems a little bit trivial, but if you're getting I-9s from folks, it is actually a requirement that fields like that can't be left blank. If they're not there, you have to put NA. And if you get audited, you'll get dinged for that. So I just want to show this both as a little learning thing and as an example that we really pay attention to what's going on here to make sure that this I-9 is absolutely compliant. I'm not going to fill out the whole I-9 though. I'm just going to hit save and exit. Now, this is cool, right? The employee has a little list of exactly what's expected for them, and you can see the status. But let's log off as the employee, and let's log on to self-service as the manager. That was Clint Eastwood, remember? So we offer the same kind of visibility for managers. So here, let's see if Clint has any forms. Actually, HR is waiting for Clint to sign the handbook again. It is a best practice. I would suggest you build an annual to-do list, and it's got sign the handbook, the confidentiality agreement, security, things like that. Typically, we used to say, sign the handbook when you start, and you don't have to sign it again unless we make any changes. That is no longer the case. A couple of years ago, there was a nasty case where an employee did something bad. They got fired, it went to court, the whole shebang, and the court ruled, and the guy said, he said, hey, it's in the handbook, you can't do this. And the guy said, hey, I didn't read that for like 5 years. And the court ruled in his favor. So now SHRM does suggest that every year you have everybody update all their agreements, re-sign and re-acknowledge them, even if they haven't changed. So it looks like it's time for Clint to do the handbook again. But if we go over to the manager tab and you look at all checklists, Clint now has a list of all the forms HR has assigned to his direct reports. So if he's doing a one-on-one with Joe or Ellen, and of course you can filter on this, he could sit down with them and say, okay, hey, Joe, we're still waiting for some of your onboarding forms. Let's see how you're doing on that list. I see you got some of them done. That's great. Like your employee data confirmation is done. But I noticed some of these you haven't even started yet, and some are actually routing. So you might want to work on that. Of course, HR has the same visibility. So these paper checklists you've got, throw those away. We don't need that anymore. And all this data is in a SQL database. So the cool part about that is you can report on it with things like Excel or Crystal Reports or a brand new tool I have coming out called HR Analytics, which is a full HR Analytics dashboard with reporting and graphical representations. If you're interested in that, connect to me on LinkedIn. I'll let you know when I can show it to you. Connects right to Sage HRMS, has all the data in that database ready to show you. Let's go back here and look at what's going on from an administration standpoint. See what we got out there, if anything. So I don't have any forms currently routing that I really want to worry about. Let me make sure I did a refresh here. Nope. Let's go over here and see if we have any in pending. The Wi-Fi is slow. There it goes. So I don't have anything. Let's go see completed. Because I did that employee data confirmation. Oh, there it is. It's completed. It had automatic save turned on. So let's go see if that happened. Let's go over here and find Joe Rotella over in the database, over in Sage HRMS, which I really think of now as a database. I hardly ever go in it because I can do everything paperless and data flow right in. I don't have to type all this. There's Joe Rotella. Let's bring Joe up. Let's click on contacts. Sure enough, there's Brian Delphia. There's Sally Smith. So I never even went in there. No worries. So let's see what's going to happen next. Typically, I would go ahead and set the employee's goals. And we have a goals application now that folks can use to go ahead and set all their goals for the year. Let's see if I can bring up goals. I'm not sure if I have goals working. I didn't think I'd have time. No, I don't have goals working. I didn't think I'd have time, so I didn't set it up. Once you've set up your goals, you could do your performance appraisals. So let's go ahead and go and log in here back as an employee view, go over here to HR actions, and let's take a look at maybe an action for myself. I've got lots of different kinds of performance appraisal forms out there. So here's one where I do one for myself, and then I do one, and then it goes to my manager, and my manager does one. So there we go. I can start my performance appraisal. If you've done online goals, they can flow right into the performance appraisal form. So here we've got customer service, and I'm going to give myself exemplary on that and say, you know, I always rock this. Don't worry about the size of the box. It grows as you type. So I can go ahead. I'm not going to do a full performance review. Just check in some of these boxes. This is a whole section. We got another section here about goals and how well you did on your goals. If you're interested in performance review, I have a whole hour webinar on goal setting and performance review, even open-ended comments. So I said I had a great year. And let's just hit save and continue so we can see that scoring kick in. So if we scroll up here, we can start to see some scores calculated. Questions can have weights, sections can have weights. So yeah, I got a perfect 4.0 going on up here. And in this next section, I have a 3.8. And you can see, remember, I rocked this. I typed in comments. So when I'm done with this, I can go down here and I can send it to my supervisor. And so now my supervisor would get the form, and they would see that's John Wayne. We'd go see what John Wayne's got on there. They would go ahead and fill in their part. They can send it back to me. We can actually go back and forth. And then when we're all done, it can route. And then if you've got compensation data built right in on the form, it'll update Sage HRMS as well. So here we've logged in as John Wayne. Let John Wayne go over to his dashboard. He's got saved actions. There's Clint's performance appraisal, so he can bring it up. He can see what Clint put in on his comments and stuff. You know, whether or not you agree with them, this is where the manager gets his chance to fill in what they think. I always rock this. Not quite. Could be better. I'm going to give you a fully effective. So they can go back and forth. The manager does their part. The employee does their part. This is just one example. You can do just manager-only forms. You can get multi-rater feedback turned on in here. I'm not going to fill it all in. Let's just hit save and continue, just so you can see an example of how this scoring works. We go back up to the top here and let my browser catch up. And you'll see that it's got the Clint score and Clint's comments 4.0, and the manager not quite 3.57. And of course, all this is in a database, SQL database, so no worries there. You can always get reports as to who's done what, where they are in the process. Could do a more complicated form. How about a transfer? So I'm going to bring up a form for somebody that I manage. One of my direct reports is Dan Rutherford. Let's transfer Dan, because I want to show you what it's like to do this paperless compared to logging into Sage HRMS. So if we look, this is what's in HRMS right now. Dan is in operations in San Francisco. He's in manufacturing. He reports to me. And here's all of his pay. Dan has 3 direct reports, Sally, Donna, and Paul. They all report to Dan. So I'm going to go ahead and move Dan. There's actually a ton of jobs over here in manufacturing. You can see the full list. But Dan's going to move over to QA, quality assurance. So I'm going to pick QA. The form's going to wake up, update, and now you're going to see there's not quite as many jobs as in QA. So you can have jobs tied to departments. We're going to make Dan a QA inspector. And he's going to stay in San Francisco, but he's not going to report to me, of course. That's why we're moving him. So I'm going to assign him over to Sam Wilson. And it is a promotion, and so he should get a raise. Now notice 3 signatures on here. I'm going to give Dan a pretty big raise, though, 15%. That's going to update annual pay, unit pay. I'm going to hit save and continue. Remember these 3 folks on the approval slip. Let's go down. Whoa, look how many approvers there are now. That's because behind the scenes I have a rule in place that says any raise over 15%, any form, no matter what the form is called, if it has a field that will cause salary to go up more than 10%, it requires executives to sign off on it. So that's an example of strategic routing, rule-based strategic routing. Dan has 3 folks that report to him. Oh, they're not going to move with him. I got to keep them in manufacturing. So I'm going to reassign them to Clint Eastwood. He's the other supervisor here in manufacturing. And I think I'm good to go. Let's just hit initiate, and it's going to send it to Grace for her approval. Now I want to show you a new value, because they can say, hey, you know, I think it should be this instead of that. And they might initial it on your paper form. Well, the same capability in HR Actions. And of course, you can turn it off on a per form basis. So let's log in as Grace. Oh, looks like I typed Grace's name wrong. Maybe she got that email saying she has a form to approve. It's a transfer for Dan Rutherford. So she would have gotten that email. I'm not going to open email and show you email. You guys know that part. So she goes over here and goes through the dashboard. There's Dan's transfer. She hits review. And she could say, whoa, 15% raise. That's too much. I think it should be 11. And of course, she can leave a comment. Raise was too high. I lowered it a bit. She can approve it. It'll go on to the next person with this new amount. Of course, that audit trail you saw is going to track this and that she changed it. Or she could disapprove it, that ends the form, or she could push it backwards. In the case she's the first person, she can only go back to who initiated the form. But these folks can go back in that routing. So she can go ahead approve. It's going to send email to Joe Black over in HR. Let's jump over here to HR and see what's going on from that standpoint. I'm going to look at the active dashboard. There's the transfer for Dan Rutherford. I can view it, see exactly what's on the form. There's the 11% raise. Oh yeah, Grace, look, she lowered the raise from 15 to 11. That's why nobody likes Grace. And then, oh, look at this performance review. It should be 3 months from today. Let me get out of here and fix that. Looks like my login timed out. That's another setting that you can set for security purposes. So let's audit that transfer form. And I'm going to change this review date. It actually should be 9/25/2019. So I'll make a little audit note, fixed a bad date. And remember, it's going to log all that. And we did just have that leadership call this morning, and they said this was all approved, and Joe's not even here to sign it. He's out at the SHRM conference, so I'm just going to hit approve all, and said CEO said to approve this. Hit approve all. That's all done. Now you might have this set up to automatically update Sage HRMS. In my case, I know I don't because it touches payroll, and I like having that little bit of control, but that's totally up to you. So I'm going to go look at my inbox pending. Yep, there's the transfer. I could view it, but we just looked at it. I'm just going to hit save, update Sage HRMS. And let's look over here inside Sage HRMS. I'm going to go back over here to view my employees. In fact, let's search and let's find Dan Rutherford. There's Dan. Let's go over here and look at job and pay, current pay. Yep, 59, there's the bump, but let's go check his job. QA inspector, sure enough, reporting to Sam Wilson. Cool. And remember, he had 3 direct reports, Sally, Paul, and Donna. I'm going to go find them just to check. There's Sally. Let's go see where she is. Job and pay, current pay. We didn't touch pay. We just touched her job. Who she reports to is now Clint Eastwood. Yep. So there we go. We did that whole form. We did a transfer. Remember, if you had done this by hand, you'd be in here right now in Sage HRMS, finding Dan, changing all his data and who he reports to, then finding Sally, then finding Paul, then finding Donna for each one, changing who they report to, and then getting up, filing a piece of paper. We don't have to file a piece of paper, right? It's all here. We can just go into our electronic file cabinet. I'm going to go over here to the all section. And we show you the most recent forms, but if we said, hey, I'm curious, Dan Rutherford, he just got that transfer. Dan's done great since we've started using HR Actions. I just want to see everything in Dan's personnel file. Let me just do a quick search. And sure enough, he's had a transfer, a pay change, his performance appraisal. There's all the forms. I can click and view them, even see the attachments. And the cool thing here is I don't have to go by employee. I could go by form name, who initiated it, the dates, you name it. And remember, all this data is in a SQL database, so you can report on it. With the HR analytics tool, you might decide to slice and dice this and say, you know, I'd like to look at this particular piece of data across all people in the company or across this department. If it's performance appraisal data and you're aimed at that database, well, you could start to really look to see if you need any interventions, because in this department, all the scores are dramatically different than this department, or this department treats women differently than they treat men, or new hires compared to people with experience. You know, while I'm in here though, I got one other thing to do. That transfer form should have an attachment and a bonus too, to optional bonus. So I've got a lot of forms here. I'm going to go add those fields fast. I'm going to go bring up that transfer form. I'm going to edit it. So we're in an 8-step wizard now. And here we go. The first step is the title of the form and then instructions. So I'm going to edit the instructions and say you can optionally add an attachment and also give a bonus. Cool. So now we've updated the instructions. And right now we let Grace change the value of that raise. If I wanted to turn that off and say approvers can only look and not touch, I can just check this box. Click next. This next panel is all about dates. Oh, and attachments. Yeah, I need one of those. So I'm going to call this supporting documentation. It's not required though, so I'm not going to check that. It's optional. So now we've added an attachment. Now I need to add a bonus field. Well, check this out. Current job, current job organization. Sound familiar? Well, current job, current job organization. It's the tabs. So this is how you build a form. All the fields in Sage HRMS are right here, and they're grouped exactly the way they're grouped on those tabs. So if I want to add a bonus, it's the bonus amount field. I don't want to call it bonus amount. I'm going to call it one-time, oops, how about one-time transfer bonus? And I'm going to make a note. I could copy this form, edit it, and just change all these labels to Spanish. And I should do that because our other office, there's a lot of Spanish speakers there. That'll help. So I'm going to put one-time transfer bonus. That's cool. Let's see, what's the next step of this little wizard? Next step is, oh yeah, setting up field defaults. The default for the bonus is 0, so I'm not going to worry about that. And there's a list of who their direct reports, their supervisor. That's already there. I'm not going to touch that. So we're on step 6 out of 8. This is where you can put user-defined fields. So let's say you want to build a form and you need to put something on it. Maybe it's a little survey. Do you want to, for the annual party, you want to go to the zoo or the comedy club. You don't want to put that field in Sage HRMS. So use user-defined fields. You've got a bunch to choose from. The data goes right to the SQL database. You can report on it. It just doesn't go to HRMS. Step 7, put the fields in order. Oh, there's the transfer bonus. That should come down here. How about right before annual pay? Cool. And the last step here, this is where we set how many signatures. Right now it's one manager, one person in HR, and then the training person. If you don't approve this within 72 hours, it skips you and goes to the next person. We have dates when the form can be available. And if you're a programmer type, IT, you've got 11 hooks here where you can trigger a SQL stored procedure that happens at any of these times. That's how you can really customize the process. So I've edited the form. If I wanted to, I could change who has access to it. I'm going to go in and put in a business rule though, because that's got a bonus field, and we have a company policy that says if a new value for the bonus amount is greater than 3,000 bucks, then it requires at least one executive. Bonus requires exec. And that's for all parts of the company. You could even do this for specific divisions or departments, your org levels as an example. So I'm going to hit save. So we even put in a strategic routing rule. So we're all done. That form's live. So in fact, let's go over here and log off as Grace. Let's log in self-service as John Wayne. And then we'll bring this to a close. There's John Wayne. Oh, I typed the wrong password. See what happens when you go fast. So John logs in, and let's go over to our HR Actions dashboard. Go to that manager file cabinet, start a new form, and let's look at our direct report. Oh, Dan doesn't, he's not in my list of direct reports, right? Oh, of course not. We just transferred him. So he's already gone. Sage is updated. Let's go find our transfer form, and I'll hit submit. And let's see if we got some new instructions. Yep, you can optionally add an attachment and give a bonus. And there's our attachment field. And there's our one-time transfer bonus field. So we even edited the form, no programming, all done. So in about an hour, you've seen me go through the entire employment lifecycle, doing a job requisition, posting it on a job board, pulling it into a new hire form, hiring, onboarding, I-9, W-4, keeping track of the whole process with checklists, annual to-do list, performance appraisal form, transfer somebody. And if you remember, I haven't typed a single thing in Sage HRMS. All of it was done self-service, all of it was done over the web, and the data flowed between all these modules. By the way, that transfer updated Active Directory and changed Dan's information in Active Directory. I didn't have to email IT and tell them to do it because I have that connected as well. Cool thing is if I terminate someone, it won't delete their Active Directory account, but it will disable it. So www.delphiaconsulting.com. And if you look up here in the upper right, when the site comes up, you'll see that there's a link that says software manuals. So here it is right here, software manuals. Just click that link, and what we've tried to do is put all the documentation for all the modules related to ABRA and Sage HRMS right here in one place. So you can bring those up. We have a great, if you're doing payroll and you have a lot of garnishments, we have a fantastic garnishment manager, keeps track of all the priorities, the rules, the caps. If you're on ABRA, and some of you folks said you're on ABRA, well then I strongly encourage you to visit www.migrate-to-hrms.com, because guess what, folks? Time is running out. You're going to want to think about how you migrate from ABRA to Sage HRMS. And I have a tool that'll do it for you and bring over all your payroll history, your check history, all your demographics. And in many cases, we can do it in 90 days. And you don't have to worry about timing. SQL stored procedure that said, hey, whenever you put in this date, roll it to this date or that date to match those pay period dates. So that answer there in a nutshell is yes, we can set those dates. It looks like Brian's been answering some of those. Robert wanted help about a better a recording of the demo. We'll get to him. I think Brian's answered everybody, so we're good to go. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tina, and she can wrap us up. Tina, are you still out there? I think you might be on mute, Tina.
And while we wait for Tina, Brian, I didn't send this to everybody, but we will record a audio issue-free webcast of this and send it out to everybody. Also, Joe invited you, if you'd like to show this to a group of people and have a more interactive discussion, we're happy to do one-on-one meetings with folks as well. Just let us know.
And I'm back. Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute. This is Tina. Just wanted to thank everybody for attending, and that concludes today's webcast.
Thanks, everybody. Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.